Imagine a flying machine that defied convention, an aircraft that didn't feel the weight of conventional landing gear, launching it into flight on a disposable dolly, a sort of dolly that propelled it to the runway and was abandoned shortly after takeoff. Its landing involved no deployable wheels, but rather a simple metal skid projecting from the underside of the fuselage, a controlled glide that required unparalleled precision. And the propellant? Forget gasoline. The Me-163 Komet was powered by a more volatile, more dangerous force. Two liquids so reactive and unstable that the slightest failure in their handling or containment could literally disintegrate a human being in a matter of seconds. And the performance? In just 2 minutes, this marvel of German engineering was capable of ascending to altitudes that surpassed the capabilities of the vast majority of contemporary fighters. This was the Messerschmitt Me-163 Komet, the first and, to date, the only rocket-powered fighter to enter operational service. An aircraft conceived with the audacious purpose of defending the Nazi Reich, but which ultimately became an emblematic testament to innovation taken to the extreme, a manifestation of technological desperation, and, tragically, a harbinger of disaster.
By 1944, the tide of World War II was already turning irreversibly against Germany. The skies of the Reich, once the undisputed domain of the feared Luftwaffe, had become death rows for Allied bombers. Massive formations of B-17s and B-24s tore across Europe daily, dropping tons of explosives on cities, vital industrial centers, and transportation infrastructure. The once invincible German Air Force saw its ranks of experienced pilots decimated. Its conventional fighters, such as the Messerschmitt Bf-109 and FW-190, struggled to contain the growing aerial threat, becoming easy prey for the Allied forces. The situation demanded, more than ever, a radical solution, an innovation that could reverse the course of the war. In this desperate scenario, the visionary mind of Alexander Lippisch, an engineer with a passion for tailless aircraft and a deep understanding of aerodynamics, rose to prominence. Since before the war, Lippisch had been exploring the potential of aircraft designed for maximum aerodynamic efficiency and minimum air resistance. His audacious premise was to build an aircraft that did not rely on a piston engine and propeller, but rather on the brute force and acceleration of a rocket engine, an idea that, for many, bordered on science fiction. The Nazi leaders, consumed by urgency and the need for a decisive technological advantage, heeded this bold proposal. Thus, the Me-163 Komet project was pushed forward, an aircraft that, in its conception, seemed to have traveled from the future, promising unprecedented speed and climb capability. However, this promise came at a steep cost, an inherently dangerous machine that would prove as threatening to its own pilots as to the enemies it was tasked with combating.
The Me-163 Komet's first impression on the ground was, in itself, a paradigm shift. Its design was radically different from any other aircraft in service. It was a compact machine with a remarkably short fuselage and wide, delta-shaped wings optimized for high speeds. The cockpit, housed just behind the engine, was cramped and offered limited visibility. As mentioned, traditional landing gear was non-existent. Takeoff was performed on a wheeled dolly, which was ejected once the aircraft gained sufficient altitude. For landing, the only option was a retractable skid on the underside of the fuselage. Touchdown precision was crucial. A clumsy landing could result in a catastrophic rollover. However, the true beating heart and soul of the Komet lay in its propulsion system, the Walter HWK-109509 rocket engine. This engine did not use fossil fuel. Its power source was a combination of two highly dangerous chemical propellants. The first, known as T-Stoff, was a concentrated solution of hydrogen peroxide, or H2O2, chemically stabilized. Its oxidizing properties were so intense that it could corrode metals, damage clothing fabrics, and, most alarmingly, cause severe chemical burns on human skin. The second component, C-Stoff, was a mixture of methanol and hydrazine hydrate. It was a volatile, highly toxic fuel with an explosive ignition potential. When these two components were mixed inside the Walter engine's combustion chamber, they reacted exothermically and violently, generating a colossal thrust that propelled the Me-163 forward with impressive force. Danger was inherent in every second of operation. Leaks in propellant tanks anywhere in the system could lead to spontaneous ignition, resulting in a devastating explosion or direct exposure of the pilot to corrosive chemicals. To mitigate these risks, pilots were equipped with special protective suits made of chemical-resistant materials. Even so, the slightest technical failure or human error was enough to turn a combat flight into an aerial funeral.
The practical result of the combination of aerodynamic design and the Walter rocket engine was simply overwhelming. The Me-163 Komet was a pure speed machine. Its ability to reach speeds in excess of 950 kilometers per hour placed it far ahead of any Allied fighter in service at the time. To put this in perspective, the most advanced piston engine fighters of the time could barely exceed 650 kilometers per hour. This abysmal difference allowed the Komet to climb vertically at a dizzying rate, reaching altitudes of up to 12,000 meters in less than 3 minutes. For Allied bomber pilots, encountering the Komet was a terrifying and disorienting experience. Suddenly, a small dot would appear on the horizon, growing exponentially in size within seconds. It would whiz by like a meteor, a strange silhouette against the sky, firing its weapons with devastating accuracy and disappearing as quickly as it appeared. The Komet's attack strategy was the lightning strike. Two cannons, the 30mm Mk-108, mounted on the fuselage, could destroy the airframe of a heavy bomber with just a few accurate hits. However, this extraordinary performance had a critical limitation. The engine's combustion time was extremely limited. All this power and speed were available for a maximum of 7 minutes. After the propellant was consumed, the engine shut down, and the Me-163 effectively became a high-speed glider. The energy accumulated during the climb and attack was all the pilot had to attempt to return to base, hoping to avoid interception by enemy fighters, which, although slower, were more numerous and had greater range. Allied pilot reports described the Komet as the fastest thing that ever crossed the sky, but also highlighted the frustration of seeing it disappear so quickly, leaving behind only the trace of its fleeting passage.
Despite its promise of air superiority, the operational reality of the Me-163 Komet revealed a grim truth. The machine was, in many ways, more dangerous to its own pilots than to the enemy. The challenges began as early as takeoff. The disposable launch cart, or dolly, often ricocheted unpredictably against the aircraft's structure, potentially causing structural damage before the flight even began. Landing, as already detailed, was a moment of extreme tension. The lack of conventional landing gear and the reliance on metal skids made landing a high-risk maneuver. A miscalculation, an irregularity in the runway, or a failure in the skid retraction mechanism could lead to a violent rollover
resulting in serious or fatal injuries to the pilot. But the most insidious danger lay in the nature of the propellants. Any small crack in the storage tanks or fuel lines could lead to leaks. If T-Stoff, concentrated hydrogen peroxide, came into contact with materials, when exposed to organic materials, such as the fabric of a pilot's uniform, the leather of their gloves, or their own skin, it reacted corrosively, generating intense heat and severe, painful chemical burns that could incapacitate the pilot instantly. The statistics are damning. It is estimated that more Me-163 Komet pilots perished in operational accidents, technical failures, and propellant incidents than in direct combat with enemy aircraft. Even when the aircraft performed as expected, its combat effectiveness was limited by the engine's short lifespan. The window of opportunity to attack Allied bombers was minimal. Despite its breathtaking speed, it took hundreds of missions and a significant number of sorties for the Komet to actually down a significant number of bombers. It was a spectacular engineering machine in theory, but tragically flawed and dangerous in its practical application.
Looking back, the question that emerges is the true impact of the Messerschmitt 163 Komet on the war. Total production of its combat version, the Messerschmitt 163B, reached approximately 279 units. In a conflict of global proportions where industrial production capacity was a decisive factor, this number proves negligible. The investment of financial resources, materials, and crucially human lives, both engineers, technicians, and pilots, in the attempt to design and operate this miracle weapon demonstrates a glaring disproportion to its practical outcome. The Messerschmitt 163 Komet never had the potential to reverse the course of the war or contain the overwhelming strength and productive capacity of the Allies. While Germany devoted its engineering to a niche and high-risk project, Allied aircraft manufacturers, such as the United States and the United Kingdom, continued to produce thousands of fighters and bombers monthly. They used more conventional but more reliable mass-produced technologies. The Nazis' desperation for a decisive technological advantage simply couldn't overcome the overwhelming reality of the Allies' industrial and military capabilities. The Komet, for all its innovation, ultimately became a symbol of a misguided strategy, a high-stakes gamble with minimal returns. Despite its strategic and tactical failure, the Me-163 Komet cannot be ignored. It left an indelible mark on the history of aviation, serving as a milestone and a catalyst for future development. First, the Komet irrefutably proved that it was possible for a manned aircraft to reach speeds that, until then, had been the preserve of research laboratories and experimental test flights. It expanded the limits of what was considered aerodynamically feasible for an aircraft in active service. The project served as a crucial proving ground for technologies that would become fundamental in the post-war period. Concepts such as delta wings, high-speed aerodynamics, and the principles of rocket propulsion developed for the Komet were studied and adapted by engineers in the United States and the Soviet Union. This research influenced the design of jet and experimental aircraft in the following decades. Alexander Lippisch himself, after the war, continued his research and development work abroad, taking with him his innovative ideas on wing design and propulsion. These contributions were fundamental to the development of several cutting-edge aircraft. Today, the Me-163 Komet is remembered not only as a war machine, but as a complex symbol, a testament to the daring of German engineering and its ability to conceive the unimaginable. Yet it also serves as a grim reminder of the extreme dangers that can accompany the pursuit of supremacy.
It was a weapon born of technical genius, but ultimately succumbed to the excessive risk inherent in its very design.
The Me-163 Komet transcends the definition of a simple military aircraft. It was the embodiment of a desperate race against time, a daring manifestation of technology that sought to overcome impossible barriers. Its story is a potent reminder that technological innovation, no matter how brilliant, can advance faster than the human capacity to safely control it. And ultimately, it is the individuals, the pilots inside these high-speed machines, who pay the highest price. All that said, the question remains: if you found yourself in the shoes of a Luftwaffe pilot in 1944, ordered to defend the Reich against the onslaught of Allied bombers, would you accept the cockpit of a deadly rocket like the Me-163 Komet? Or would you refuse what would undoubtedly be the riskiest and most unpredictable flight in the history of combat aviation?